Tipp today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007, the free phone number if you want to make a call to us. Leanne is producing today. Coming up on the show, mother and baby home survivor Teresa Collins will speak to us in just a few moments' time. We'll be hearing from former County Cllr Tom Wood, who said that the issues we heard about from last Friday's budget meeting goes back to the abolition of the town councils. Navigating grief at Christmas, that conversation continues on. Commercial rates, our businesses already under huge pressure. Our Legal Eagle John Lynch will be with us, and Johnny B from the Two Johnnies will talk to us at the end of the programme. We might just be announcing a fantastic giveaway in association with the two boys. Speaking of great giveaways, we're delighted always to be associated with Mr. Located on Forest Street in Cashel and Abbey Street in Kerr. They've given us a €50 voucher to give away every single day this week, and we will tell you the detail around that in just a little while as well. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers, and right across the newspapers today, tributes being paid to the broadcaster and architect Hugh Wallace, who passed away very suddenly at the weekend. The main story on the Mail today: overcrowding in the prison system has become so severe that the 1,500 new beds promised by the government will be instantly wiped out, we're told. The Irish Times, and the lead story on the Times today, and of course right across the newspapers as well, the government is set to announce extra supports for Ukraine today as its President Vladimir Zelensky makes his first official visit to Ireland. Additional supports from Ireland for Ukraine is to be announced, with sources indicating that this would amount to a further €100 million in non-lethal military support, including first aid supplies, rations and fuel, and 25 million for Ukraine's energy fund as well. Also on the Times today, frontline uniform Gardaí could be using taser stun guns almost immediately under proposals being brought to government by Minister for Justice Jim O'Callaghan. And also on the Times, and it's a story that's been going on now for a few days, Dublin councillors could not have removed the name of former Israeli President Chaim Herzog from a park in Rathgar because of ministerial delay in providing regulations for the process. A council meeting has heard. The Irish Examiner, and again the Zelensky visit is on the front page there. Also interesting one, that weight loss drugs such as Ozempic and Mounjaro offer hope to millions as obesity becomes one of the most serious global public health challenges, affecting up to 2 billion people by 2030, the World Health Organization has said. But the WHO, which has launched its first guidelines for use of the skinny jabs, as it's known, warned that medicines alone will not solve the challenge, as it called on governments to create healthier societies. Finally, a look at the Independent, and again, like most of the front pages today, dominated by a photograph of the broadcaster and architect Hugh Wallace. The main story on the Indo today: the UK is shutting a lucrative loophole that enabled Irish people who once worked there to cheaply boost their British state pension entitlements by thousands of euro. You know the story, I'm sure. Anybody who once lived in the UK will have to pay 5 times more to top up their British state pension record from next year. That's a look at what's making headlines on your newspapers today. If you want to make comment on any of those headlines, 083 311 3311. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping, because we were talking yesterday on the programme about that budget meeting of Tipperary County Council collapsing without agreement on Friday last, and proposed in the budget was a 5% increase in commercial tax for the local authority to continue to fund services. Now, we spoke yesterday to Independent Councillor Liam Brown and to Sinn Féin Councillor David Dunn, and we had some queries as to why we didn't speak to Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael councillors on the matter. Well, Leanne made contact with at least 8 Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael councillors. They were either unavailable to us or they didn't respond to us. So that is the reason why we didn't speak to them. Now, Stolen, which is now streaming on the RTE player, tells the story of how women who fell pregnant out of wedlock were treated in an Ireland dominated by the Catholic Church. Between 1922 and 1998, over 80,000 unmarried mothers were incarcerated in church-run mother and baby homes. Teresa Collins from Rossgrave was involved in the documentary, and she joins me now. Good morning to you, Teresa.
Good morning, Fran, and good morning, everyone.
And lovely to talk to you again. Does the rebroadcast of Stolen play a significant role, Teresa, in bringing the issues surrounding mother and baby homes back into public discussion? Is it important because of that?
Very important, Fran, because the mother and baby homes and institutions haven't even really been dealt with. Even though, say, when it comes to payments and all that hasn't been all sorted out. So, again, it's good to see Stolen back on the air because it brings back history that they are trying so much to hide. But it brings back the truth, and the truth never goes away.
And you said that this programme, it reiterates the fact that lives were literally stolen.
True, friend. Now, at the beginning of it, I loved the scene where Margaret put in, and she's a fantastic writer, where she put in the sea.
Yes.
And the idea of the sea was the black and white and jet black, of how hard we had as survivors and the depths we had to go to get our files that was hidden so hard. That was the idea of the sea. And as the saying is, Ireland is surrounded by sea. So that was the way she was capturing our depth and what we had to come out of it. Now, it is an intense film. There's no mistake about it.
It's not an easy watch. That's for sure, Teresa.
It's not. But it's an intense film that was made, say, when we were there, we came in with our stories. But before we were born, there was stories there of how they did things, how they hid things, how they survived, how they washed their hands, how they hid babies, how they hid adoptions, how they hid the money they got from the people for the children. That's all there before our stories came to call, as the saying goes.
There seems to be a conversation kicking off in recent times, Teresa, and I'd love your opinion on this, that while we can acknowledge everything that went on and, you know, some of it was just inhuman and heartbreaking and all of that, at some stage or other, we have to move on. What do you make of that conversation that seems to be growing legs at the moment?
I do agree we have to move on. But the only way to move on is let the government put in place to the people in the institutions the payments, what they set out in the 25 sections of the Commission of Inquiries. We're not holding it up. They're holding it up by not giving it out. It isn't us. They have to start working with us. We've no problem. We'll move on. But until they start working, until the Catholic and the government start working on solving out what they have to solve out, we can't move on. It isn't us that's holding it up.
The long-term trauma, Teresa, I mean, is this still with you on a daily basis?
Not on a daily basis, friend, because I had a good result. I kind of got through my own, so I was happy with that. But there is people that has suffered and that will probably never suffer. The only time they stop suffering is when they die. And it has hit a lot of people on that side of it, 100%. Now, as I say, mine was okay. I got to do what I wanted to do, and my idea now is I help others out to try and get somewhere closer to their answers as much as I can. You know, that's where it comes in. But there is people genuinely that has passed away and hasn't got answers. And, you know, it's so sad because they're not asking for much. They're just asking for answers.
I presume you often think back to your own mother. I know you were raised by your grandmother, Teresa, because your own mum, who gave birth in Sean Ross, and spent, I think, about half a year there, about 6 months there. But she suffered greatly afterwards, didn't she?
She did. Look, you can't say they didn't, they did. But I suppose maybe in one sense she did pull a lot of it to the back of her mind and dealt with it and got on like most of them do. But she never really talked about it, so I can't really answer on that. I tried it once or twice, but it didn't work out, so I left it alone. Because it's like anything. You can try a thing, but you know when to stop.
And I remember reading a piece about you, though, where you spoke about that stigma that she had to endure. And was that how she dealt with it, by just silence and not talking about it?
I have a feeling, yes, Fran, it was. I have a feeling, my own heart tells me it was. So I suppose everyone deals with this issue in different ways. And that's the difference of humans, I suppose. We all have our own way of dealing with things. She dealt with it the best way she could and got on with life the best way she could. So, you know, you have to... I can't keep hounding her because it wouldn't be fair. I mean, she doesn't hound me, so I won't hound her. You got what you could get and you got your answers to what you could get and you accept that and go on. But as time goes along, sometimes your family, you'll hear extra answers will come out and you realise, well, that's the connection. You know, that sort of a way.
When you took me around Sean Ross, the atmosphere in the place, I couldn't get it, particularly in the labour room. But one of the things that will stay with me is when we looked out the main window onto the drive. You couldn't help but imagine, Teresa, you know, young women arriving up that drive to that front door, and how frightened they must have been at that stage.
Well, Fran, when I went back myself now, I went back first when, I think about 016, Tony gave us the offer of going back and I was delighted. But the first time I went back to actually go in the door was with the film crew Al Jazeera, which we did for the Mother and Baby Scandal 1 and 2. And I'm not joking, Frank, the man, he closed the door behind me. Well, I jumped a mile. So I knew myself. I said, if I jumped and I only coming in with the lads, what must the mothers that was expecting feel like when they jumped? They must have jumped it as well, because it was harrowing and it is scary. There's no mistake in it. And what you said is quite correct. There's different, how would you say, different feelings throughout each section of Sean Ross. Now, the one there in the film, Stolen, where I'm walking up to church, and that was the church where I was baptised. Yes. Now, the water font isn't there and the whole lot. Now, that I cringed myself at that. And even though I was only getting baptised, but I cringed to say, well, this is where I had to walk up, where I was bought. You know, it does shock you. There's no mistake in it. It's not, as you say, friend, you've seen it yourself. There was certain parts of it eerie.
Well, very eerie indeed. What I also found notable about Stolen is the lack of anger or even the lack of tears. It's just people sharing a story, but it's as if that it's taken something from them, that they don't even express it in anger or tears anymore.
Well, I suppose it's like any friend. A lot of us have probably cried out our tears.
Yeah.
That film was being made, because I mean, I started back in 2010, so you're cried out to one bit, you know what I mean, and you're trying to be right to tell the story in another bit, and you're trying to do it right. Now, as the saying is, I did kind of cry, you know, at it.
Yeah.
You know, it does hit the heart. You can't say it doesn't. It does.
And you know, and I'm so sorry that you're upset talking to me now, Teresa. But even still, it's having an effect on you. Even when we're chatting now.
Yeah, it does, friend, because you're reliving what you shouldn't be reliving. I mean, when I went to find out my history, all I wanted was my history, my files, where I came from, what was involved. And that's all you wanted. I didn't want fame, I didn't want fortune, I just wanted to know my history. But we had to go the long way about it. You know, I mean, talk about trying to it was like getting blood from a stone now, to be honest. And I mean, they had it. They had it all written down. And no way would they give it. I mean, I often think after when I went and got my history and when I got my father's side of the story, I could have had extra years with him. And years maybe when he was a bit better to deal with, because, I mean, he was in his 80s and Parkinson's. And, I mean, I could have seen him, 20 years previous to that if I had to get my files, because I did go about him. And I didn't get that. And that was a stolen part from me, that 20 years till I met the man at 80 plus.
And at that stage, you couldn't discuss, really, I suppose, what was important to you.
No, because you had to take him gently and kind. Yeah. Now, we had a good 5 years relationship after, which was good. At least I got 5 years with the man.
Yes.
But it was slowly but surely, and he was filling in, and he was trying to fill in. And then he didn't know. And, it kind of shocked him because he had a lot to take on board too.
Yeah.
So you were kind of watching his health, and you were trying to let him deal with little bits at a time. You couldn't put everything on him together. You couldn't.
Right, but in the meantime, you were dealing with your own issues, Teresa.
Yeah, but you're looking, friend, that's one thing. With the mother and baby homes, all of us that has been born in those institutions or has anything to do with them are the best support system to each other. And I had two great friends that I could call on when I needed help. And that's the way it was. And two powerful ladies, I will say that. And today, to the present day, we're the best of buddies. But when COVID came and hit, as the saying is, we couldn't do any of the commemorations. We kind of lost contact with a lot of the American side of it, and then when the hotel in Racket Hall closed, we couldn't do the commemorations either. So you kind of lost a bit of, the
momentum of the whole thing,
yes,
I suppose.
The momentum of it,
Yeah. And
so it is.
And the big disappointment has to be with the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Mary. You must have been so disappointed with how they've dealt with all of this.
Absolutely. None of us are horrible people. We'll talk, we'll out it, and we'd love to talk, but not one of them, through their solicitors, through this, through that and the other. Well, to me, that gave us that they're hiding so much, that they're afraid to talk. I'm not afraid to talk to a nun. I'm not afraid to talk to a priest. And we talk nicely. And, there is, don't get me wrong, there's good priests and good nuns out there, and I'm not going to say they're all on the one book. But at the same time, we don't mind talking, and we'd have talked. And I think if they had to listen to us and our stories, we might have more compassion on it.
But you think they still have an awful lot to answer for, Teresa?
Oh, 100%. 100%. They have an awful lot because they're not coming behind government, they're not doing the funding, that they're not helping out. As I say, one woman said to me one day, will you stop hitting on the Catholic Church? They were this, they were that, they were good to us and all that. I said, we're not hitting on the Catholic Church. I said, you remember, the Catholic Church did the wrong themselves. We didn't do it. We're only the result of it. That's the way I put it back to the person.
I presume, Teresa, you would advise everybody to watch. As we say, it's not an easy watch, but you think we should all watch it.
It's not an easy watch, but it's our history.
Yeah.
And it's our history that should never be put under the carpet. And I think I have to say to all of them in the film industry that did that with us, there was tears behind the scene, friend, that you didn't see with everybody, and that's being honest, because you were trying to do your best when you were recording it to do it. I just say, please watch, because it's the history of it, and fair dues to the younger generation that we have today, like of Jack Casson there with his songs.
Yes.
We have an awful lot of younger people in colleges doing thesis, come to you with doing it on the Leaving Cert, and it is wanting to be known. But what we have too is our own grandchildren coming on, taking on the story, listening to it a bit more, and saying, my God, my grandmother went through this, or my mother, or my grandfather, great-grandfather, they were all involved in it. So it's not a history chapter that should be closed for Ireland. It's a history chapter that should be learned to everybody. Now, as I say, it mightn't affect everybody in ways, but you don't know what your aunt, your uncle, down the generations, were they involved? Because I had one girl I was dealing with her grandmother. And she's become very involved in the history of it now. So that's why I say it's a history programme as well as a STAD programme, but it's our history. We're Irish. We are entitled to tell the story on it, and I think that's the most important part in coming out on the story of it.
Teresa, great to talk to you as always, and thank you so much for your time this morning, Teresa.
Frank, can I just say a quick hello to the big brother in England, Tony Collins. He's listening in Birmingham. He was on to me last night, and he said if he didn't say hello to him, I'd have no Christmas cake, so I better say hello.
Well, hello to Tony, and I hope he's well. Thanks, Teresa. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, friend, for the opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
That's Teresa Collins speaking to us there about Stolen. The documentary, which is now streaming on the RTE player. As I said, not an easy watch, but I think we should all watch it. As Teresa put it there, it's a very important part of our history, not one to sweep under any carpet. Let's take a break. We're back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, hook on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, hook on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
On yesterday's programme, councillors Liam Brown and Davy Dunn discussed the breakdown of communication at last Friday's Tipperary County Council budget meeting. Now, the annual budget meeting got underway in Nina on Friday, but by 4 p.m, councillors just couldn't agree on a course of action. Proposed in the budget was the 5% increase in commercial rates for the local authority to continue to fund all the various services. Former County Cllr Tom Wood from Cashel joins me now. Tom, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm well, Tom. Great to talk to you again. You made the point that the issues that we heard about from Friday's budget meeting goes back, we can trace it back to the abolition of the town councils, Tom.
Yeah, I suppose, Fran, the first thing I would say is it's not unusual to have a bit of a problem or a bit of dispute when it comes to the adoption of the annual grant for the local authorities. And as I said, going back in, many years ago, in Cashel, for instance, when I was on the town council in 1979. And, every year there was a big debate. We had only 9 members on the town council at the time, and to get 9 members even to agree to the budget for that particular year would have been a difficulty. And one of the big issues always, Fran, was the rates on commercial properties. Yeah. Because, of course, everybody would know people in business, etc., etc. And even back in those days, Fran, in comparison to today, the number of commercial properties would have far outweighed the numbers today. I mean, when you go around the countryside, go to villages, towns here in Cashel, the numbers of properties that have closed in the last number of years, Fran, where rates now probably wouldn't be even generated at this stage, property rates, has increased dramatically. So I am not surprised that on Friday some members, and remember you're talking about 40 members of Tipperary County Council trying to get agreement or a majority in relation to 40. It wasn't easy when there was 9 on Cashel Town Council or 29 on South Tipperary County Council.
But Tom, is the difference not... I mean, they had the opportunity through the workshops on the run-up to this to iron out all of the problems, but that didn't seem to work when it came to Friday.
Yeah, it didn't seem to work, and it seems, Fran, that it was mostly within particular parties that the problem arose. And we always had advanced meetings in relation to creating the budget for a particular year, so that very often issues would be raised with the council officials, who were always very interested in making sure that we secured a budget on the particular day or night when the vote would be taken. So it is surprising, that there was that confusion and not agreement even within the party structure itself in order to reach an agreement on Friday when the draft budget was proposed or presented to the members.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you're saying that with the town council, that will you explain that to many of us who just we don't get that? You had your own separate budgets then, Tom.
We had our own separate budgets then, Fran. Every year, this time of the year again, the budget would be introduced, the draft plan would come forward, and a sizable proportion of the income in those days was generated from the commercial rate, as I said. Now, presently, I believe that, as you said, the commercial rate this year was going to be increased, was up to 5% by 5%.
By 5%, yeah.
It was increased last year by 5.5%. So, you have the commercial rates which brought in the income. You have, of course, grants from government, which is a major part of the annual budget. And then you had payment for services. I mean, all the services ran at the moment. And remember, in bygone days, we wouldn't have parking charges here in Cashel, in our car parks or on our streets, etc., etc. All those charges add up, and they're all included, and they all are funding a part of the actual annual budget for a particular year. So you had all that changes that took place. You have the motor tax income, which is used, the local property tax, as I said, the parking charges, planning fees, and even housing rents. Now, planning fees in particular, Fran, 20 years ago there was huge developments taking place, and the council, got in significant amount of funding from planning charges, at that particular time. That would have decreased as well in recent years. But as I said, back in the olden days, and of course our budget would be very small at that time. But for a town like Cashel, we'll say a big proportion of it came through the commercial rates, and it wasn't unusual that you would have problems with members of the council in agreeing to an increase in the commercial rate, because, as I said, everybody knew everyone in town. You knew the business people, etc. But at the end of the day, it was always ironed out, and we didn't get a stage where a budget wasn't adopted.
Right, because of course, if a budget isn't adopted, it's a very serious situation, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's a very serious situation. I was thinking the other night at the weekend, like what happened in the US in recent times.
Yeah, it just shuts down, doesn't it?
It's on a scale of that nature, naturally on a much smaller scale. But for services, every service would be affected in the event of a budget. I think it's 21 days they have to adopt the budget, or the estimate for the year. But if it isn't adopted, I mean, all services would be affected, because remember, the services that are provided then, even for instance, our street cleaning service, our library services, all those services are all funded, and I suppose a lot of people don't realise that all those services, libraries, etc., are all funded through the income generated by the local authority and adopted in a budget.
And Tom, is this just down to the fact that there's not enough funding coming from central coffers to the local authorities?
Yeah, well, it's also, I think, Fran, I was thinking about it as well, due to the fact that the demand is much greater now than it ever was. The demand for services is greater. The population has increased. You can think of, even in Cashel, all the new housing developments that have taken place, all the services that have to be provided to the increase that's there. So I mean, that is a huge increase in demand as well. So that has to be taken into consideration. And remember again, the number of commercial properties is declining at the same time as we're expecting to increase, the income from commercial properties by 5% for 2026.
Yeah, but we're also going to be looking at 5% every year over the course of this government. You'd wonder how much more businesses can take, Tom.
Well, that's the question, and that is why I can see from a point of view of some people who couldn't agree, even we say within their own meetings that they had prior to Friday's meeting of the council itself, that there would be pressure on them in relation to that. I mean, people are trying to keep their doors open. I mean, the number of premises that have closed down, as I say, just here in Cashel alone, and in comparison to other towns, we're very, very lucky that we have about 18 or 19 premises that have closed in the last year to 18 months. And premises aren't being sold. They're not even being rented out. Because what would they be rented out for? The day of somebody opening a small business, a shop or whatever, that day is gone. And mostly due to people buying online, etc., etc. We know that, and that's not going to change. So you have all that coming up as well. So it is more pressure. A lot of the people that have their shop doors open and their business premises doors open today are barely surviving, and people don't realise that.
And, this talk about the possibility of some town councils coming back, Micheál Martin said he didn't specify how that was going to work and stuff. Would that alleviate some of these issues, do you think, Tom?
Well, it was always much easier, Fran. You can well imagine when we had town councils here in South Tipperary, we had Tipperary Town, we had Cashel, we had County Cllr, we had the corporation in Clonmel. It was much easier when the County Council itself, and I was on both of them at the same time, when our estimates meeting came up for the County Council, we were doing our estimate and our budget for the county area outside of those particular towns. And of course the towns themselves then, as I said, we had our own budget meetings and we adopted our own budget. So it made it much easier than having 40 people from a county the size of Tipperary going into a meeting to try and, to adopt a budget like that. And remember also, Fran, that we always had commercial rates as far as I can recall. But in every town it differed, because it depended on what funding we had to generate in Cashel. It might have been higher in Clonmel at that time because it was a bigger town with bigger demands. So it wasn't just a set figure that covered every commercial business in the entire county of Tipperary.
That's very interesting. Can I talk to you just briefly about something else that I know is very close to your heart, but I'm not sure if you're across that piece by Michael McDowell in the Irish Times recently, where he said Ireland has so many ruined castles and tower houses and abbeys and stuff. Would it be a terrible thing to re-roof, for example, the Rock of Cashel? Now, Leanne did some tracing for me, and she went all the way back to the 1990s, where you were talking about this, and it was your ambition to see the cathedral crowned again, as it was put in the headline. What do you make of what he's been saying?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, Fran. It was in last week's Irish Times. And, the question he put out was, with so many ruined buildings, cathedrals, churches, castles, etc. around the country, he put the question, should we not be more ambitious? And should we not be prepared to re-roof buildings? I was delighted to see it because, as you said, actually it was Kitty Holland in the Irish Times back in 1998 that did the article in relation to my interest in trying to secure the roofing of the cathedral on the rock. And back at that time, there was opposition to it. The OPW themselves weren't interested in doing it. They wanted to protect it as a ruinous building. Now, my question to that has always been, the cathedral was built over 700 years ago. Everybody knows where it's positioned on that height above the Golden Veil. Could people tell me that the roof that was actually put on it day one was the same roof that was there in the 14th century, in the 16th century, in the 17th century? And my argument was that over the centuries it would have been re-roofed, like our church here in Cashel has been re-roofed even at the moment. So what was the problem back 20, 30, 40 years ago in having the cathedral re-roofed again? Now, some people had objections that, it shouldn't revert back to the church, etc., etc. It never had to revert back to the church. It could be used for all kinds of purposes as an exhibition.
And it was de-sanctified anyway, wasn't it?
It was.
Yes.
It was. And it was in 1869 that the Rock of Cashel was one of the first monuments under an act of British Parliament to become a national monument. And the rock was taken over officially as a national monument by the Board of Works in 1872. Now, we did see, in my time at the Rock, the re-roofing of the Hall of the Vicar's Choral, which was fabulous. Yeah. And we have the audio-visual there, you have the exhibition centre there. The building is restored in the style of the 15th century as it was. And look at Holy Cross Abbey.
Absolutely.
50 years later, celebrating the re-roofing of Holy Cross Abbey. And if the cathedral on the Rock of Cashel, Fran, was re-roofed, it would be absolutely magnificent. And the funny part of it, back in the 1980s, Fran, when Garrett Fitzgerald was Taoiseach at the time, and I was contacting all these people and the Taoiseach himself, who was very favourably disposed to it, but actually said to me, the funding would be a problem. The amazing thing in the article, Fran, that you mentioned from Kitty Holland in 1998. Some big company in America actually discovered that it was in the Irish Times, and they actually contacted us to say that they would be prepared to actually fund the re-roofing of the cathedral on the rock.
Wow.
And that was directed to the OPW. But the policy in the OPW was keep it as it is. That's basically the history of it. But as I said, the Rock of Cashel would have been re-roofed on numerous occasions in its 700 plus years of existence.
So is it a good thing that maybe he's ignited a conversation?
Oh yeah, I'm delighted because look, Fran, I believe that at some stage it's going to happen. Whoever thought that the Vicar's Choral would have been restored and re-roofed? Nobody would have dreamt about that 60 years ago. 60 years ago, who would ever thought Holy Cross Abbey was going to be re-roofed? You know, and they've done wonderful work in restoring in the restoration of Cormac's Chapel in Cashel. Now, it has its stone roof and always had, which is a great bonus. But, I mean, go to the Rock at any time, and you can see, naturally, a building of that height, 200 feet above the rest of the Golden Vale, standing in wind and rain and all kinds of weather. It's amazing that after over 750 years that the cathedral, a beautiful Gothic structure, is still even standing. And if it was roofed, it would protect it for centuries to come.
Well, it's a dream, Tom. It's a dream. Always a pleasure, Tom. Happy Christmas, just in case I'm not talking to you, Tom.
And the same to you and all your listeners, Fran. Thank you.
Bye-bye to you now. That's former County Cllr Tom Wood speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
Now, yesterday, Angie McGrath from Cashel joined us on the show to discuss navigating grief, especially during this Christmas season. The conversation emerged from a Dear Phil letter, where the author of the letter described feelings of guilt because he or she found it very difficult to spend time with their dying father. I'm delighted to be joined by Tricia, who was in correspondence with us. Good morning to you, Tricia.
Good morning, how are you?
And good to talk to you today. We were particularly taken with your message to us. Condolences to you, because your dad died last year, I think, Tricia.
Yeah, he's dead a year and 3 weeks.
And you spent a lot of time with him coming towards the end, and then you went home to change. And while you were away from him, then he passed away. Is that right, Tricia?
Yeah, I had spent, he'd been in hospital for a couple of weeks, and we knew, he wasn't going to come out. We were called in, I was in there Friday, I stayed Friday night, came home for a few hours. We were called back in Saturday to give him the last rites. He was still with us Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday. And by Monday evening, I was I literally was smoking. I smelled like a halt inside. And I just needed to change the clothes in the shower and a bit of sleep. So I went home Monday evening, and I was on my way back down to the hospital on the Tuesday morning, and we got a phone call to say he had just passed away.
And even with all the time you spent with him, Tricia, you were telling us that, there's still an element of guilt because you weren't there when he passed.
Yeah, so I told him for one more night, you know what I mean? The guilt set me off for leaving. Now, I know there was members of my family down there, but none of them were actually in the room. He died on his own. Maybe that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
Because everyone was staying nights and sitting around the bed, holding his hands, talking to him.
And
he wanted to look no one there.
And a year on, Tricia, do you still feel guilty over not being there?
I do, yeah.
I'm really sorry to hear that, because you were so dedicated and you spent day and night there. I mean, you were just exhausted by the time it came to the Monday.
Yeah, it was just, we were grieving his death before he even died, because we knew it was coming. And that's the sad, hard part of it. So that when he did die, as I said, we knew it was coming. It was easier to deal with his death. But at the same time, yeah, I felt so guilty for not being there.
Was he able to communicate with you all towards the end?
Not really. They had a tube in his throat. He could barely talk, so he used to write things down. But for the last few days, he was just sedated.
Yeah, and the letter that came into us, so I presume you can understand how this person is feeling then, because he or she, we're not sure whether it's a man or a woman who wrote the letter, but he or she finds it very difficult to be around the dying father, the father who is passing away. Can you understand? Did you have to make yourself be there, Tricia, or is it something that you wanted to be there?
It's something I totally wanted to do.
Yeah.
There was like 3 of us, plus my son, and my nephew and brother-in-law, whatever. So we said we take turns, one couple staying in the hospital. Like, he was in the hospital for 3 weeks. Week and a half, we were told, like, he was told that was it, like, don't have to not come back. So, yeah, we wanted to be there. We were all there.
Right, and you all wanted to be there. He was aware himself it was coming towards the end, Tricia, was he?
Yeah, he knew himself, like, he knew he was fucked, you know what I mean?
How did he deal with that?
No, he told me about his regrets and stuff. So no, he sent me sister furniture shopping to get this, that, and the other for me, man. And said, I should have spent the money when I could and should have retired earlier. Shouldn't have had the operation. He had a cancer operation a few years before that. Things like that, We sat down in the room one night and we watched the last League of Ireland match of the season. And this day I can't bring myself to sit down and watch League of Ireland match.
Because it brings you back memories, needless to say.
Damien Shelburne won with Damien Duff as manager, and yeah, it was great. And he enjoyed the match. That was my last match. I cried when Tipp won the All-Ireland this year because he wasn't here.
And because he loved his sport and the like.
He would have loved Tipp come back against Cork that day.
The Christmas time, all the milestones for you, you've been through most of them at this point, I guess. But Christmas particularly, Tricia, how difficult is that?
Well, I told my family, look, things have changed since. My mother had a stroke. She's in a hospital bed in our sitting room. I'm looking after her. I told my family, look, I just want nothing to do with Christmas this year. I just not in that headspace of celebrating.
Yeah.
You know what? It's just another day for my mother, so it's just going to be another day for me. She doesn't know the difference, so there's no point.
It's obviously difficult on your mum, but it's difficult on you, Tricia. That's very sad, that.
Well, look, she has a dementia as well, so
does she?
Look, she doesn't know what's going on.
Well, it's certainly not easy on you, and it's certainly not easy on your family either. Tricia, thank you so much for talking to me today, and thank you for sharing that with us. And look after yourself anyway as well, won't you?
Oh, I will, yeah. All
right. Thanks, Tricia. Thank you, and good morning to you. That's Tricia there. How do you feel about that? 1800 938 007. A listener says, could you tell that lady that there's been a huge amount of research done, and 95% of people will wait for their loved ones to leave the room before they pass away. Please don't feel guilty. You did everything you could. That's very interesting. I didn't realise that. Somebody else says, I feel so sorry for the girl who lost her dad. I firmly believe her dad didn't want her to be there for his final breath. That's how God works, says another listener. And going back to my conversation there with Tom Wood, Tom Cummins from Carkey was on, saying, Fran, a perfect example of how inspiration and ambition and hands-on hard work achieve something spectacular is Holy Cross Abbey. I'm sure the Rock of Cashel can be restored to its former glory as well, says Tom. As a survivor of the religious abuse, says one of our listeners, we can't move on until everything is dealt with. And this is responding to my conversation with Teresa Collins there. The listener goes on to say, it's easy for people to say, move on, but I've lived with my trauma for 56 years and I can't move on until this government stops treating us all like criminals. That's into us on 083 311 3311. To WhatsApp then, Fran, we were with our father when he passed. It was excruciatingly painful for us to see the life draining from him, but it was the last bit of comfort that we could give him, says a listener. And back to the idea of re-roofing the Rock of Cashel. I forgot about roofing some of our castles, Fran, but some of our finest ones now are being destroyed by ivy, for example. It wouldn't take much to fix that before these ruins fall down. Deirdre says, if the OPW, that's the Office of Public Works, have so much money to spend on bike sheds and steps, then they should at least have the money to restore our built history, says Deirdre to us on 083 311 3311. News and information's coming up.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. Now, Mr. Menswear, located on Forest Street in Cashel and Abbey Street in Clr. They've given us a €50 voucher to give away every day this week. And if you want to get involved in that now, all you have to do is text or WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Put Mr. in your message and your details, your name and your address, and we'll have that draw before the end of the programme. And now, so many people impressed with Teresa speaking to us a little earlier on. Good morning, Fran. We can feel Tricia's pain. It is so difficult grieving, says one of our listeners. Somebody else says, to this day, and it's over 30 years now, I regret not getting to the hospital to be there for my relative's last breath. It's like the last thing you can do for them, to be there with them in person. But a remarkable message in here. And it goes, I don't sleep to rest anymore, Fran. I sleep to escape. Sleep is the closest thing to peace I've found. In dreams, I'm not grieving. In dreams, they aren't gone. Waking up feels like losing them all over again every single morning. The loss of a child is so hard to come to terms with. This is one of our listeners. It's a remarkable text into us on 083 311 3311. Now we continue our conversation around commercial rates this morning, and Joe Hayes from Clean Line Farm Services Limited in Tipperary Town says that businesses are already under pressure. He joins me now. Good morning to you, Joe.
Good morning, Fran.
And it's really good to talk to you today. The 5% increase in the rates, along with all the other difficulties of running a business, Joe, is it just getting too much?
Well, it is, and in fairness, if I could just say, starting off, that as far as I'd be concerned, this is a conversation we shouldn't be having, and you shouldn't be wasting, with all due respect, airtime on it if our councillors were right. Because, if you go back and look at a small bit of the history behind this, if I could just put it together very quickly for you.
Sure.
Roughly in late 20, I might have the timeline fully right, okay?
Yeah.
But roughly in late 23 on the local papers, there was an article from the council about looking for an increase of 7.5% of the council rates. That was in late 23, roughly, okay? And into early 24, it's on it again. And then in May 24, I went to pay my rates. in the local office here in Tipperary town, and I said it to the man at the counter about the rate increase. Oh, he said, what increase? That never happened. Okay? So that was fine. Roll on the general election. We had a situation where the government at the time created this power-up grant for all these businesses that were under pressure, right? Mm-hmm. And to qualify for the power-up grant, you had to have your rates paid up to date, your VAT paid up to date, and your tax affairs up to date. Okay?
Yes.
Before you could get the grant. Now, Heather Humphreys came on television saying that only 54% of the businesses had applied for the startup grant or for the power-up grant. But sure, if you looked at the criteria, there was an awful lot of businesses that were under pressure, that didn't have everything paid, so they couldn't avail of the grant in the first place. That would tell me that there was about 45 or 46% of the businesses were under pressure.
But it was if my memory serves me correct, that was very modest grant. That was $4,000. Was it $4,000 or something? Yes,
but if you couldn't apply for it, what good was it? Yeah. The people that really needed it couldn't get it. Okay? So that was fine. That was all pumped out on radio and television, and which was helping businesses, right? Roll on the election. The first meeting in our county council of the new government approved a 5% increase.
So what is that saying to you, Joe?
What happened in a week that all the businesses were under so much pressure, and then all of a sudden they could throw a 5% increase on top of the business?
Right, when the election was done.
Yes. Now, before that, when I heard this thing was coming up, I contacted a number of councillors. And basically, in a long story short, again, they had been told by the party whip that they had to approve the 5% increase. And I didn't hear all your programme this morning, just heard a bit of it. But I think you made a point that you couldn't contact some of the councillors yesterday.
Either they didn't respond back, or they just said that they had other things to do. They weren't available to us, basically. Yeah.
They weren't available, yeah. So I think the same pressure could be coming on again, you know. And all this is putting huge pressure on businesses again. And people say, actually, what's 5%? But 5% is on top of the 5% that we had already, right? A couple of years ago, we had rate equalisation going across the county. That increased my rate quite considerably here, plus other people around the town. And if I could just put people in the picture of what is actually going on with the rates. I had 4 visits from the man that was looking after the rate equalisation, okay? And on the 4th occasion when he came in here, he stood in the middle of the building and he said to me, you put a new roof on this building. I said, I didn't. But he said, there's a new roof on this building. Well, I said, I bought the place in 2014. The new roof was put on in 2006. I said, so what has that to do with the rates? Well, he said it was an asbestos roof, but there's an insulated cladding roof on it now, is it? So you've enhanced the value of the building, so your rates are going to increase. So on one hand, we have our government wanting to insulate places and improve the rates of loss of energy out of our buildings. And when you improve them, you get penalised. And I want to take that. I know I'm rambling a little bit now.
No, it's making perfect sense, Joe. Yeah, go on.
I want to take that a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
I was refusing to pay my rates this year. Well, not refusing. I was trying to get something done to try and bring my rates back some bit.
Mm-hmm.
And in all this, you have to remember the council are just revenue collectors for the government. The council have no impact whatsoever. I can do nothing about the rates. That's simple facts. Because any time I tried to talk to them below, I was told I had to contact the valuations office in Dublin, which I done in August this year, right? Contacted them a number of times.
Mm.
And on one of the phone calls, it came up about the solar panels and so forth. Now, I have put solar panels on the roof here a number of years ago.
Yeah.
There are proposals and it's actually waiting to be put into law that if you have solar panels on your roof, it's going to increase your rates. I asked the lady...
Are you serious?
I asked the lady concerned friend to send me out a letter clarifying that, and I wanted to know who actually wrote it into law or who approved it. I'm still waiting for the letter.
But you believe that's true?
Well, why would she tell me a lie, Fran?
That's incredible, though.
I know. But this is facts. I'm telling you what I was told. I would love to have had a letter. I was waiting for the letter. I was going to actually contact somebody when I would have the hard facts in front of me. But I sent an email looking for it again. I still haven't got it. But that is what we're dealing with. I mean, they're going to the low-hanging fruit hole. They just seem to think they can keep hitting the same business people the whole time, just pull more and more money off them, like, on top of all the other charges. And now on top of the businesses have to pay the new pension schemes that are coming up as well. Like,
yes.
You know.
Yeah, the auto-enrollment and all of that.
The auto-enrollment, yeah.
And it looks like we could well be having this same conversation next year and the year after, because it looks like they're going to need to put 5% on every year over the term of this government. You know, can I put their angle to you, Joe? And do you tell me what you make of this? Right, if they don't do this, they're saying they will not be able to fund all the various services that the council does, parks, libraries, play places, all of that sort of thing. Does that make sense to you? Because they're not getting enough money from central coffers.
Okay, they're not getting enough money from central coffers, but where has there been an effort made to save money by the council in any of these situations? I'll give you a small example, friend. Again, it's not just what Joe Hayes is saying, it's there on public record for people to see it. Okay? Mm-hmm. The roadworks in Tipperary town were supposed to go ahead from the Maid of Erin down to the Cashel Road.
Yes.
That job, when it was voted on, was supposed to cost 6 million. Okay? Mm-hmm. This is there on record. That part of it was blocked. That job didn't go ahead. And another thing about all that is on the vote, in the middle of all that job was actually voted down. But then at lunchtime that day... Yeah,
but that's because businesses were against that because of the hold-ups that it would cause, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But, friend, in the middle of all that vote then, at lunchtime, there was some kind of a miraculous decision made that half the job would go ahead from the Bancher Road to...
The graveyard there. Yeah.
Graveyard.
Yeah.
Now that much of the job is after costing 6 million. So how does that make sense? How does that make any sense?
Well, they'd probably tell you, inflation is huge, inflating costs are huge, and the cost of building materials and all of that.
No, I can't go along with that, friend. There's no man working out there that his wages have doubled in a year and a half or whenever that job was.
So what do you put it down to? Is it just sheer waste? What is it?
Well, I would have a bee in my bonnet about a lot of things. Right. But the country as such, I think a lot of this started, the real difficulty started with a lot of this when Bertie Ahern was in power and the new pension agreements were put in place for the civil servants. We have a situation in this country where if you join the civil servants at 20 years of age and you work 30 years in the civil service, you can retire. Mm. Okay?
Yes.
Now, if you live to 81 or 82 years of age, we're going to be paying you your pension longer than we were paying you for working. Now, what country can withstand that kind of commitment?
Yeah, well, we're hearing that we can't. We're hearing that we can't sustain it.
Yeah, but what do they do? They just keep going back to the people that are working, taking more. Like, you have to remember, nobody pays for anything except the taxpayer. Maggie Thatcher made that comment 35, 40 years ago, about the UK. It was the same here, nobody pays for it. It's everything goes back to the taxpayer. People think that they say about the government that the council should have this and the council should have that. Where did the council get the money? The council only gets the money from the taxpayer. Yeah. Right? Like, we have the same situation. Sorry, no, but this is a lot deeper than just the rates. You have the pyrite situation. That's another thing. Going to cost absolute millions to the country. Now, the people have to be sorted out. I have no doubt about that. That's not the problem. Did anybody any of the politicians look at who could be responsible for this? Mm-hmm. Right? We have, based in this country, one of the biggest building contractors in the world. Roadstone Holdings, but in 28 countries across the world, right?
You're not going to accuse anybody of anything now here, sure?
I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but where did the pyrite come from? Yeah. Where did it come from? The people that created it have walked away with no responsibility. But yet you and I, your children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will be paying for pyrite. That's simple facts.
Yeah, we seem as well. I mean, we're struggling. The council is obviously struggling because not enough money coming from central coffers. But we seem to be ultra generous in other situations.
Yeah, but sure. Why are we doing up all this the town centres? Like, the councils are deciding to do that. Like, central government are deciding to do that. Look at the money spent in the town centre in Thurles, right?
Yeah.
Flower beds and do away with parking. Like, there's less parking there. Do away with parking. The whole idea of this town centre development and city centre development was supposed to be bringing more footfall into the place. But yet in Thurles, in the middle of doing that work, they decided to take the post office from the centre of town down to the outskirts, down to the shopping centre. Inside in Limerick City, they spent 22 million in the middle of Limerick City. 22 million, Frank. Right? And about 8 or 9 months ago, there was an article on the Sunday Business Post, and the business people from the city centre were there, and the footfall had actually dwindled since the money was spent. So who is responsible for this? Like, or who is making the decisions that these town centres need to be done? Like?
But we can never seem to find who is responsible for anything. Nobody is ever brought to book about anything.
No, definitely not. And that is an ongoing thing. I'm sorry for rambling on a bit now, but I mean, it's not just the rates. Like, why is there so much money needed? Like, and like we are turning in slowly. And as far as I am concerned, personally, we are turning into a little bit of a dictatorship here.
Do you really believe that?
Oh, it's 100%.
What, all of this is imposed on people without consultation and the like? Is that what you mean?
And look, why have we a court system here? We have a court system made a decision about something in Dundrum in the last 2 weeks, and our Taoiseach has overruled the court system. Right? We have a situation where the parties are dictating to their members down the country that you must vote the 5% into law. The people that we elect aren't able to represent us the way they want to. That's my own belief.
Well, in fairness, there appears to be some dissent among the parties themselves. I mean, if they are whipped where that's concerned, it appears that there's a bit of dissent among themselves. So maybe that's while I'm kind of cross that they won't talk to us, maybe it's a good thing that there's at least some people there with some, what.
Oh yeah, but sure. I saw there are people out there that have a backbone and they do stand up. And I saw it firsthand here in Tipperary town again, going back to the road. But people did stand up, in fairness to them, and I would admire them for that. But this is another part where I think they have to show a bit of backbone and stand up and say to the government, no, this can't happen. We're not running with it, like. And Sinead Kerr can go and find some other place where she can save money, like.
Yeah, but you see, there isn't. The trouble is that they will tell you that there isn't any other place, and if they don't have this, we'll all suffer from it. Can I ask you something? I think you were about 30 years in business, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take me back and make a comparison for me. The first years in business, and was it easier to be in business than it is now?
I would say yes, because you have a whole plethora of rules and regulations hitting you from all sides now that were not there before. And you can take all those rules and regulations and you can pass them down, in fairness, to a council level, all the safety, the health and safety. Now, a certain amount of it is necessary, but it's all been overdone, and it's people that implement and carry out all the checks and balances, the amount of those that are there getting paid for all this, they are costing money, they are costing money, and the same way at business level, you have all these regulations that you must meet for all the different departments, whether it be agriculture or whoever it is, and then you have thrown into the middle of all that for businesses now as well. You said about the new enrolment scheme and all that.
Auto enrolment,
yeah, auto enrolment. But you also have on the other side of all this the WRC, the Work Relations Commission, right? to me, some of the cases that they have taken on over the last number of years, and you see them yourself reported in the papers and different things there, absolutely scandalous.
So are you saying it's harder to be an employer now?
Totally, yeah. I have my middle friend, Corey. I will never employ anybody again, like. It's as simple as that, like.
Wow.
No, it's not worth it, like. It's not worth it. You look at some of the situations that has gone on in this country in the last few years, and you remember this. The WRC are government funded. The best of solicitors and the best of barristers, okay? And an employee decides to take a case against me or against you, right? You're a small business trying to keep going, and you're supposed to be able to take those people on. They're the people that have written the law.
But the WRC, do they not advise employers? Are they not a source of advice as well for you along the way, no?
I didn't ever get any good advice off them anyway.
All right.
No, and like you have to remember as well that and look at what has happened in some of the cases, like the money that the employers the businesses have to pay out, that has to come out of their pockets. There's no insurance or anything for that, like.
All right, Joe. Well, it's an interesting conversation, and that's for sure. But you think it's harder to do business now? It's harder to do business.
100%, yeah. 100%, yeah. Without a doubt, because there's so many different charges and so many things coming at you from all the sides, like the increases in the costs of insurance, the increases in the rates. You know, it's all coming, and it's getting more difficult again with the online shopping and all that's there as well. Like, you know.
All right. Well, Joe, I must leave it there, but my best to you and the family. No, not at all, Joe. Great to talk to you. Great insight there.
Keep in mind, Fran, I'll leave you on this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm reaching a point where another couple of years are going to do me, right? And I say, like, you're, in fairness now, if you don't mind me saying, so you're kind of the same vintage as myself. I am
indeed.
Right? So just keep it in mind. We'll have free travel fairly shortly. Like, and if you yourself and myself can take off on the train, you can do a bit of busking, and I'll sell a few tubes of other and we won't have any rates to pay or anything. So I'll be quite happy.
I'll go for that, Joe Hayes. I'll go for that. Look after yourself, okay. Joe. Thank you. Gurmina Mahagat. Bye bye. That's Joe Hayes there of Cleanline Services. That's his company, Cleanline Farm Services in Tipperary Town. We'll take a break. Back in a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Martin Brown was on to his former Sinn Féin TD to say, Fran, the parties at the budget meeting were not whipped. It's all optics with Fianna Fáil from the Gael Labour and the Lowry grouping. This has gone on since 2014 at every budget meeting. 2 months of workshops, and then the day of the meeting they raise concerns and look for adjournments for 15 or 20 minutes to discuss it more. Then they come in and pass the budget, says Martin. Big response to Joe Hayes there. I'll bring you some of that reaction a little later on in the programme. The skincare industry is a booming and very competitive market, and two Tipperary women are continuing to break new ground. Nicola Lyons and Elaine Cross set up Banor 3 years ago using sheep's milk as the basis of their product line. Our reporter Alison Hyland went to catch up with both of them to see how things are going.
The last time we sat down with Nicola Lyons and Elaine Cross 2 years ago, they were just embarking on an exciting new venture, having launched their skincare brand, which uses sheep's milk and sheep wool oil. In a competitive market, the use of sheep milk was a new idea, and since we spoke last, they now stock in over 50 shops and pharmacies. They also supply to a span Kilkenny and are exporting to the UK and the US. I travelled to Windmill in Cashel to catch up with Elaine and Nicola, who told me how their growth has been.
Time flies when you're having fun, I suppose. It doesn't feel like that. Well, we're less naive, I suppose, than when we met you. We're now heading into 3 years in business.
Well done.
So maybe as a reminder for people, we're Bonor, so it's a skincare company made using sheep milk and wool. So it comes from my family farm in Cashel, and then Nicola is the pharmacist. So we like to say it's that farm meets pharmacy like skincare. We started out with 4 products: a lotion, wash, scrub and an oil. And now we have about
22 SKUs now.
Wow.
Between sets, new products, all based around the sheep milk and the wool.
Yeah.
So we've really expanded this year. So we added in, what we have is the soaps. So we have a bar soap, a sheep soap, a hand cream and a lanolin lip balm. So we've loads of little nice Christmas gift they do, and they're all natural as well.
Yeah.
And I suppose how we came up with the whole idea is from the sheep milk. We were here actually in this house, in Elaine's house, and I was asking her brothers what is the benefits of sheep milk as opposed to dairy, cow.
Yeah.
And they were saying it's really high in fats, vitamins and minerals. So then from my background working in a pharmaceutical company, I was saying, can you put that on the skin? And then Elaine's obviously background in the food industry. And then we did the research for about 2 years, and then we're actually still researching, but we found out that the sheep milk is great for skin.
Yeah.
So as Elaine said, farm meets pharmacy. Some of the research we did previously was based around we got our products and we compared against 2 global brands, and ours performed better for efficacy in terms of skin barrier protection, collagen production and antioxidant protection. So we were thrilled with that. So there is science behind it, although they're natural, safe for all skin types and all ages as well. People use them. So yeah, and we've also just got another research grant which we'll be doing this year, and we'll be kind of doing more around skin irritation and stuff. So that's coming from True Enterprise Ireland. So we're really lucky and excited about that.
How unique is this then? I mean, is there anyone else using sheep wool oil or sheep milk in Ireland? Do we know?
So sheep milk is quite unique. I still get asked, can you milk sheep? But I suppose, look, that's just because the nature of Ireland, we've hung our hat on cow dairy for very good reason. But I suppose there's an opportunity to look at alternative milks, and not just, but within the animal space. And there's definitely a demand across Europe and even globally. New Zealand, who have a very similar production system to Ireland, very grass-based around cows. They also have a lot of sheep, and they've looked at sheep dairy as kind of another way for sustainability reasons, for farm viability reasons. And I suppose we're in a similar situation here. Sheep farms are, not probably the lowest, income generators, and maybe milking could be another alternative, income earner outside of the lamb and the wool, which probably isn't one. But it's because it's a very special milk. If you compare it to cow or goat, it actually beats them in terms of proteins, fats. This side of the world, we actually haven't had much opportunity because to try it. It's because cow milk is grass-based, and then if you maybe were looking at something else, another production system would be goat, and that would be mainly inside. So that's kind of why the two are more common here. But there's definitely a demand coming for sheep milk, and actually we do it right here, because in Europe it's a very cottage industry, but there's a lot around Spain, Italy, Greece, and because of drought, they have a lot. It's really expensive to feed the sheep because it's not on grass. They're actually it's in decline. So there's an opportunity there, because people will actually be very familiar with sheep milk because it's very popular in cheese. There's fetas, halloumis, it's pecorino. So people actually know it already. So the wool, so we get a European source of the lanolin from the wool, and that's because, well, first and foremost, a lot of our wool is exported. It costs farmers maybe €8 and they make 2 to get rid of, to shear them and get rid of the wool. And there's a lot of investment now around how can we maximise wool, get more value from wool, because it is such a precious resource. But it probably will start more as a fertiliser, a lot more kind of even insulation, those kind of uses. Lanolin is a very good ingredient, and if you actually looked at a lot of your hair care, skin care, there probably is lanolin in a lot of them because it's such a good ingredient. We use it because it helps with that, educate people around how the products from sheep are so good alongside the milk. So it's a very complementary to what we already do with the milk.
So tell me about your customers then. Who buys from me?
So we have a real wide range. So we have, for example, we're in the Blarney Woolen Mills, which we launched this year, so we were thrilled with that. We're in Dove Hill. So people can pick us up as a gift, and we find people buy us like male and female, and we get a lot of online customers, repeat customers, men as well. Particularly we have people use it for dry hands and stuff. So for example, last year I got a phone call from a man named Tim. He was a builder in Dublin, and we were actually selling out in a pharmacy in Dublin, and we couldn't figure out why this one product was just flying out the door. And he said he owned a building company, and he saw us on Nationwide, and he tried for years different products. He'd been to dermatologists all over Europe and nothing worked. And then he started to use our hand cream, and our lotion at the time is a bigger bottle, and he found it brilliant. So that was amazing validation. So that's actually why we just brought out last month it in a little tube so people can carry it around. But that is, so we have a real wide range of customer, and different age groups as well. People, I suppose, sometimes we have an elderly customer who kind of likes the link to the land. Then we have the pharmacy based customer, so people might have skin conditions, use it for drying. We have people buy it as a lovely gift for someone with a housewarming. Now this is our busiest probably week of the year, pre-Christmas. So already we're ramping up we have a Black Friday offer on this week, and people are buying it as Christmas gifts for mums, dads, pregnancy as well. We get a lot of people buy the body oil, particularly. It's great for healing and scarring. So a wide range, and we've actually expanded this year. We now sell online to the UK. So we're getting a lot of orders from the UK, which is brilliant. And we ship to them. And then we also have a small chain of stores in the US called the Tipperary Stores.
Brilliant.
So we launched with them this year, and there's a real link to Tipperary, obviously, with our brand being Tipperary. And he's a man with ancestors here, and he sells all Irish products, and he actually ships to the US as well. Around the US, so we direct a lot of people to buy online from him as well. So yeah, we're expanding.
How is that for you? I mean, 2 years ago when I last spoke to you, and now 2 years later you're expanding to the US, you're expanding to the UK. What the stress of that? What's that been like? I mean, because you both work as well.
So Nicola's in the business full time, and then I work in another job. I'm very lucky in a farm in Dublin as well, but I'll be reducing down as well. But we have a great support network as well. So we work with a lot of people to help with sales, fulfillment. And we've invested a lot in working, I suppose, with experts, people who are good. Because when you met us last, it was a lot of packing the boxes at home. And it got to the stage where, you see those things and you're like, when you buy from small business and they're celebrating, whereas we were like, who is packing that box now? Like, nearly. So when it gets to that stage, you need to... So for us, it's been a lot of outsourcing for now to help kind of, I suppose, set ourselves up to scale, or to, that it's not reliant on Nicola and I. Well, now it is reliant on Nicola because she's in it day to day. But like this year was a big kind of shift for us. While we're still very much focused on Ireland because it's, we have a lot more to do here. We did go to Cosmoprof. So it's the world's biggest trade show with Enterprise Ireland.
Wow.
So we were one of 8 Irish brands there. Out of 3,000 brands, and I suppose what it was for us was a feasibility test. So it was kind of a dipping your toe into what could be, because everyone's like, where would you export it? And like, we're like everywhere. But you do have to kind of figure out, and a lot of it is contacts, and getting people who will really help you figure out pricing, route to market. So I suppose we saw this as a feasibility. It was a 3-day show, and for us it was validation, number one, because there was a lot of animal proteins over there. So camel milk, buffalo milk, goat milk, cow milk, donkey milk was actually very big. There was numerous brands around that. But then even like snails, salmon, and all of that now has even been used in like cosmetic, even aesthetic, procedures and stuff. For us, that was kind of just validation around the animal side, but no sheep milk.
Wow.
So we're still very unique on that front. And then we made a lot of really good contacts, and we're still working through. Again, for us, we were like, we've contacted them now. We'll obviously be in the market next month. So that doesn't happen, because even say with the US, we were still trying to navigate that around. We didn't think Trump could affect little old Bonor in Tipperary, but it does, and the tariffs and things like that. So it's basically it takes a long time, and just trying to figure it out. So hopefully things will come from it eventually, but we'll
We've been lucky with the support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like we're now a client of Enterprise Ireland, so we got pre-seed funding from them last year, and we have had great support since the start from the local enterprise, specifically in Tipperary. So we're working with them now. We're going to be going on an export program with them hopefully in January, and that kind of help us discover. So we do there is great support. And then I was on a program, New Frontiers, with Enterprise Ireland. We're with there's loads of different networking groups. You were the Acorns.
Exactly. Acorns with the Department of Agriculture. I'm now on Acorns Plus. That's for rural women in business. But also, actually, the biggest thing has been making friends in the industry, like other businesses.
I imagine it's very competitive, but it's not. Your experience is that it's a very supportive environment.
Yeah, we're in a WhatsApp group and it's called Team Skinnies. Now, it's not a weight loss group, it's for skincare companies.
Wow.
And it's all like, even actually Away with Nature, our friend in Drangan, she's another skincare company, they're all in it, and it's very supportive group. And I suppose that you just have to have that kind of abundance mindset, and a lot of these people are small businesses, 1 to 2 people operations, and you need to be able to ask questions. We don't have as many colleagues and things like that. And
do you think you were naive coming into it, and is that a good thing?
100%. It definitely takes a lot longer. Everything from, like, we moved to manufacturing when we first spoke to you. We were in the UK now. We're now made in Ireland, which is huge for us.
That's great.
We actually filmed nationwide last year, and that was this time last year in November, and we filmed in the factory in Wexford, and that was huge for us. And I think after that we were so thrilled with the whole response we got from across the country.
Yeah.
We got phone calls, letters, emails. We sold out everywhere. It was the best thing that could happen to us. But I think people just really resonated. They could see it being made in Ireland. They could see it go from the farm, our families helping out, the backgrounds, and then the science as well behind it.
Yeah.
So that was great. But just, we definitely, everything takes a little bit longer than you'd hope with terms of production, doing the research. So even getting into one retailer, it just all takes time and building the brand.
Yeah. So with the plans for expansion then, because I know you're always looking ahead. What are we looking at for the future?
So it would be new products for next year, new ranges that we're already working on. That's it. You need to be working on them a really year in advance.
Right.
And then export, will hopefully be working and getting assistance from Enterprise Ireland with that.
Yeah.
And then the research, we just recently got another research grant. So they'll be kind of the 3 big things, and hopefully then maybe expand the team and things like that next year.
For us, it's about, like, while we feel we started in very much a gifting space, it's how do we move from a nice to have to a must have, and giving more people reasons to buy. So even our new products have come in at different price points, so that, like, it can be more accessible to everyone as well, because we are, probably at that more premium pricing, but now we've a lot more products that can give more people a chance to try it.
Yeah, and I know you were talking about branding as well before. I mean, how important is that in a presence on social media? What kind of a part does that play in running a business now?
Huge, yeah. So our branding is actually the Rock of Cashel on the outline. A lot of people don't realise that, so we're very inspired by Tipperary with the farm being here. And then on all of the images from Elaine's farm are actually on our boxes of our sleeves. So it's all, Tipperary based, and we do get amazing feedback on the branding. And then in terms of media, you really have to be out there with social media every day, doing interviews, getting just awareness.
And it's like, there's obviously so many, social media is so important now, and actually putting a face to it, which at the time we were like, oh no, we don't want to be on the, we just don't want to be, we want to be known in the background that it's credible, but we don't want to be doing this at all. But actually it's kind of a necessity, because I suppose there's so much now, even with AI and whatever, like, people actually just, they want to see the story, they want to see even the day-to-day, what you're doing, they want the journey. I suppose there's so many things. We have so much opportunity with it as well. Like, we want to educate people about farming, sheep milk. There's the pharmacy side. So I suppose it's within our, like, we need to be using it for sure.
Yeah, people definitely want the more real life. For example, I put up a story last week with a lovely elderly customer. So he rang me 2 weeks ago, and I recognised the voice. He obviously rang me after Nationwide, and he was wondering where he could buy it. So he lived in Dublin, and he was in his 80s. So this year he wanted to know if it was still in the same shop, in the Donegal shop in Stephen's Green, and he was 84 and he wanted to go in to buy it for his wife for her birthday. So I said it is still in there. So I emailed the shop, and they said they had stock. shock. And then they emailed me after he'd been in to say he'd been in, he was an absolute gentleman, and they were going to post it out to him. So I actually had his details from before. I wrote him a little thank you. We wrote him a thank you note, a handwritten note, and a soap. And he rang me yesterday just to say that he was originally from Upper Church, 84, still goes to all. He was at the Tipp semi-final, final, lovely man, and he just wanted to wish us the best. And he thought the products were great, and he saw us on Nationwide. So I mean, that just makes it so worthwhile. But for that example, we put that story, I just was sending Elaine a video, and we actually put it on our social media, obviously just saying a customer has rang us, and people exploded. They were like, get him, write him a letter, you should meet him, invite him for tea. People just loved that interaction.
We're throwing everything at it. We've even had our fathers on it.
Fantastic.
And to say they were allergic is an understatement, but like, we're just going to try everything, so we'll give it all a go.
So people love our smell. That's a real spa smell. So we actually brought out a spa range now. So we are in a lot of hotels, restaurants, bars. People buy it and they just put it in the bathrooms. And you can now get an oil and a massage and a treatment in Minted Kilkenny in the Pembroke Hotel, which is lovely.
Even shake hands in Cashel. A lot of people say to us about being in the bathroom in there.
Yes, that's one thing that's lovely if you go into local pubs or restaurants and you see it. That's a big plus.
And people have to use it. Look, they're kind of like, sorry, you can milk a sheep. You know, we're starting at that level. So for them to use it, often when they try it, you know, and get to smell it, if we had €1 now for every time someone asked us, does it smell like sheep?
Did you imagine you'd be here 3 years later when you started out?
Well, naively, 3 years ago, we probably thought we'd be global successes.
Right, okay.
But
very
you have to be naive to go into these things.
Yeah.
But no, I would say, like, we've learned so much. We're still friends.
Yeah. Well, that's the main thing.
Yes.
That doesn't always happen.
No, exactly. And I suppose there's been a lot of personal development and growth. Like, we're both doing things we'd never have.
Absolutely. And we've learned so much. It's been an amazing journey. We actually won awards, our first award this year. It was the Irish Med Awards.
Well done.
So we were thrilled with that. We won Best Beauty Brand. So that was because we were up against massive brands that we would followed for years. So that's been a massive boost. So little things like that keep
drive
it
on. Yeah, that's amazing. Anyone who's looking to look at the products, to buy the products, or to look at what you have, where can they go?
We're very lucky in Tipperary. We have a lot of support. So we have about 15 stockists, everything from Blarney Woolen Mills in Dovehill to O'Dwyer's Pharmacy in Cashel to even Relish Fine Foods in Thurles. But you can take a look at our website, banor.ie. That's BANOR .ie, and you can see all our products there as well.
Now, as well, for anyone maybe who's not au fait with technology, I mean, you'll also take orders on the phone as well, won't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And our number is available on the website.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the final hour of Tipp Today. 1800 938 007. Now, Tipperary's favourite sons, the two Johnnies, are bringing Pints in a Field back to Dublin St Anne's Park next summer. The duo will take to the stage on Saturday the 6th of June, and tickets are currently on sale. And I'm glad to say Johnny B joins me now. Johnny, good morning to you.
Brandon, man, how are you? Good to be back on Tipp FM.
Well, we're always delighted to have you on Tipp FM. Johnny, 4 years, you're into your 4th year of Pints in a Field.
I know, we're getting away with murder, friend. Yeah. It started as, on the podcast, we were talking one day, what if we ran our own festival? What would it be like? And this topic just evolved. People kept messaging us saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? So we said to hell with it. And we started putting on this one-day festival, and now it's going gangbusters. It's above in Dublin next June, and like, friend, last year was mental. We had all sorts. We had the Limerick City Pipe Band marched us out. Then we had the Venga Boys, and then we had Pat Short, and then we had the Timahoe Men's Choir, because they were on our television show and they were just great crack. So they got booked, and the parish priest, he came out and gave a blessing. Then we had the Tumbling Paddies, and the whole thing was emceed by our local independent South Tipperary County Councillor, Andy Maloney. So it's a great
Good
day
man,
for
Andy.
everyone.
And you know, on paper, that looks like you'd have to question, say, how in the name of God is this going to work? But it works brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly.
It does work, yeah. When we go to try and book kind of the bigger acts, like one year we had Craig David, his management said the same thing. They kind of said, is this a wind-up? Are you taking the mick out of us? So it can be a bit of a hard sell sometimes to try and book acts. But we had Five, we had Bass Hunter, we had Bewitched, Steve from Code Line came out and sang a song. We've had all kinds of different people come out over the years. And the local involvement too. There's always an area for Cllr, GAA, to sell a few tickets to Draw the Joker, because you know yourself, Fran, the club need the money.
That's for sure. So what about the lineup this year? Who's taking part, Johnny?
We have the Tumbling Paddies are back because they came out and just did one or two songs last year.
Yeah.
And they got such a reaction.
Brilliant.
They're back for a full set this year. And we have Cascada, who are coming. I don't think you play too much Cascada.
Not a lot, funnily enough.
But she is popular, Fran.
Yeah.
Give her a chance.
Yeah.
And we have Declan Nerney is playing a few tunes as well. And there's plenty of room left for surprises because it's 6 months away. And between now and the festival, new people will come up in conversation on the podcast. New heroes will emerge. And then we'll have to go and try and book them as well.
It's great altogether. Tickets are going extremely well, I know, aren't they?
Yes, look, we can't believe it. In Saturday week, we're in the Tree Arena as well. And it amazes us that we still do our podcast from a room here in Cllr.
Yeah.
And that we can go and do these big venues and people come and see us. It's amazing. And we don't take a single ticket for granted because people have to go out of their way. They have to travel and maybe organise someone to milk the cows or mind the children or vice versa. And it's amazing that we get to live waking up in the morning, making things, making people laugh. We never take it for granted, Frank.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I was saying to Pat Short last week on the programme. You see, people look at what you do and they look at what Pat does and they think, that's easy. They're just emulating what they're seeing in the pubs. It's not that easy. I mean, it's not that easy at all. Once you bring something onto a stage, it requires something special, you know?
Yeah, well, I suppose we wouldn't be known for hard work either. We're getting away with it. No, yeah, there's definitely funnier people than us around Cllr, you know, but I suppose we're the lads who, when, as Pat would say himself, had the stuff to do it, and we went out and done it.
Yeah.
Only 2 weeks ago on the podcast, we had local man Jimmy Luby on.
Yeah.
He was a retired umpire, grave digger, kind of part-time builder. And he got one of the biggest reactions ever. We put up TikToks of him talking about the fact that he has never paid into a GA match in his life. And Fran, he said he'd actually be critical of fellas who do. So, he was giving us his top tips on how to sneak into a GA match for nothing.
I saw that. It was absolutely brilliant. He was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant. And there's a fella who's never been on a microphone much in his life, you know, and he came on and he's gotten huge numbers. The listens to our podcast are through the roof, you know, so there's such good stuff around you if you're tuned into it and if you're looking out for it. There are such characters around the place.
Of course, but I know on the podcast at the moment, I mean, I get to speak to Johnny Luby. You get to speak to John Allitt, who's a New York mobster, for God's sake, a hitman. Where in the name of God did you get hold of him?
Well, we were over in New York during the summer doing a gig, and we arrived a day early. So had been talking to this fella for ages, John Allitt. Yeah, he was in the New York Mafia. I think he was working with John Gotti and these lads
God
that
almighty.
The Sopranos and all is based on. Yeah. Oh, it's definitely a bit different to Jimmy Luby. I'll agree with you there. It's a bit of a hairpin bend. But you know yourself, you're trying to keep people interested, trying to do something different. And it was amazing. That guy, he did 10 years in prison in South America and he came out. And at the other end of it now, Fran, he's an elected county councillor over in New Jersey.
Isn't that incredible? Isn't that absolutely
incredible? Some people would say politicians are gangsters, but that actually is.
Now, what can I say to that won't get me into trouble? And of course, the lock-in was tremendous success again this time round, wasn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, our TV show just finished there. There will be a best-of episode going out at Christmas time.
Great.
And with some crack, and we were very lucky in the last episode we got to have Cllr on the parish quiz. It was Cllr versus Mitchelstown on the parish quiz. So people come on and they answer questions that only local people could know. We had local man Jay Kiley from Cllr there came on and represented the parish with distinction. I think he was after a few jars to settle himself, but he got through it anyway. And we had amazing guests, like when you think of it. We had John McNally and great comedians. Andrew Ryan came on and Neil Delamere. And geez, it's just amazing that we film it in this little pub up in Screen in County Meath, Swan's pub there. And like every Tuesday night when we film it, the place is absolutely lepping. And no, the room, oh my God, friend, it's the hottest room in Ireland because it's an actual pub with low ceilings and all the lights and all the gear. It's not a television studio. But that adds to it. You're sitting at the bar and you've got Pat Spillane telling a story and the crowd are 2 foot away from him. Like, it's organised chaos.
But it works absolutely brilliantly indeed. Look, congrats on all the success. People are screaming at me here. Is he going to give away tickets? You've given us a pair of tickets to give away, Johnny, haven't you?
Yes, Tipp FM have been good to us, so we have a couple of tickets for you.
Well, you're very good indeed. So we're going to start that right now. We're going to look for a finalist every day until Friday, and we'll give them away on Friday. So all you have to do is text WhatsApp 083 311 3311. If you put the 2 Johnnies on that and give us your name and your details, we will pop you in the draw. I know you're up to your eyes, Johnny, but it was wonderful to talk to you today. Happy Christmas to you and Johnny Smacks and all the lads.
Fran, thank you so much to you and your listeners. You've always been great to us. Happy Christmas to you all.
Good. Look after yourself now. It's a great Johnny B there of the 2 Johnnies. And that competition up and running right now. Do you want to wear that? Do you want to win those tickets for Pints in a Field? It's happening next summer, of course, in June. And as I say, get texting, get WhatsApping, and we will give them away on Friday.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon, now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Legal discussion on Tipp Today is brought to you in association with Lynch Solicitors Clonmel, on the web at lynchsolicitors.ie and at divorceineireland.com.
John Lynch from Lynch Solicitors with me in studio. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, friend.
And good to see you. We sort of set you a bit of a task this time.
Yes, you gave me some homework.
Yeah, and it's where grandparents are concerned.
Yeah.
Do you want to set the scene for us?
Seeing as I'm a grandparent, yeah.
Me too now.
Yeah, I think the assumption and the question and the whole issue around grandparents is, I'm normally asked the question, what are my rights? And I usually say to myself and repeat it to myself and to others that it's actually not about rights, it's about the best interests of the child, the grandchild. And I think if you start with that in mind, you're starting at the right point or the right position or the right place, because that is the primary consideration of a court, that their absolutely overriding criteria is what's best for this particular child in these particular circumstances. Because, and I mean, I'm not being critical of people when I say that over the years it's always been a very high priority of mine when used to do a fairly significant amount of family law, and it was always my number one priority to deal with the issue of children first and then deal with the other issues, because as I used to often say to people, it is the one with the most long-lasting effects post any sort of conflict or separation that arises out of separation. So I think if you start with the best interests of the child as the foremost consideration, rather than come at it, well, I'm entitled to and I should and I have a right to see my grandchildren. If you start with it, what's best for the child? I suppose not an easy one and not very easy to put into praxis sometimes. But the question that you put to me was a scenario that isn't uncommon, unfortunately, where, and I'm only surmising the situation, if you know what I mean, but where for say reasons, whatever reason, a reason of separation, or one of the parents dies, or a situation like that where you're now dealing with, if you like, the in-law parent.
Yes, the daughter-in-law, I think.
The daughter-in-law, the son-in-law scenario.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with that situation, like it's a complex situation anyway, but if you're dealing with that type of situation, it wasn't and isn't uncommon that difficulties arise, and the question then comes in to me, what are my rights? And I can recite the rights, as in I can tell you what you can do as a grandparent, and I suppose that's the starting point in terms of trying to understand what exactly are we talking about here from a legal point of view now, and we're simply just looking at the legal framework. And the legal framework is that a grandparent is entitled to make an application, and that's important to understand. You're entitled to make the application. You're not entitled to be granted the access privileges or guardianship, whatever. It's not an automatic that if you come into a court of law and say, I'm a grandparent, when do and where do I see my grandchildren? It's not automatic.
Right, so you apply to the courts.
You must apply. You don't get it automatically. Similar to a situation where an unmarried father isn't automatically entitled to custody and or guardianship of a child. You must go into court. You must make your case. And the important consideration here is that when you're making your case, the best interest of the child is the overriding.
And what
criteria.
would the court take into account? This is obviously when relationships have broken down.
Correct.
And you know,
correct.
I mean,
or if the parents of the child are no longer able to mind the child for whatever reason, either that they're not there, or they might be absent because they died, or absent because they're elsewhere and they're not looking after the child.
Right. In this particular case, I think the son died, leaving behind the young baby. At the start, it was fine with the daughter-in-law. There was no problem. Then she got a new partner, and then things got a bit hairy.
Exactly.
And then they didn't want her to have any access to the child. So in this case, what would she have to prove? I suppose.
In this particular scenario, what the court looks at is the existing relationship between the child and the grandparents. They'll also look at whether, if you allow access, is it going to be in the child's interests? In other words, is it going to be detrimental to the child if you do allow access? They'll also look to the wishes of the guardian and or the other parent and see whether or not will the court override that. Because again, you're talking about, and again, as I say, the emphasis by the courts is not with a view to balancing rights, if you know what I mean, the rights of the parent, the right of the grandparent. It's not a question of balancing rights. It's a question of looking at the interests of the child only. Now, obviously, you have to look to the fact that if you don't have a right of access, you can't apply to the court. But having the right, having been the grandparent gives you the right to apply. It doesn't give you the right it doesn't push you in a position where the court starts saying, well, okay, we're going to measure this out and say, well, there's the rights of the child, there's the rights of the parent, and there's the rights of the grandparent. It doesn't do a measuring exercise as such. In that scenario, it says what's best for the child, basically. It's also relevant, of course, depending on the child's age, what the child thinks.
Oh, of course.
And that comes into play as well. Because
would the child be asked in the court?
Depends on the age of the child, depends on the maturity of the child. Those are the two factors. Age, obviously they're linked. Age and maturity kind of go hand in hand to a certain extent, but obviously it also varies because certain children are more mature at earlier ages than other children. So it's down to the assessment being made by the judge as to whether or not should I listen to the child, should I ask the child. And I remember way back in the early stages of when they first introduced this right of access, I remember one district judge who was very much tuned into and wanting to hear the child. And then there would have been another judge that I would have been dealing with who wouldn't really kind of think to listen to the child at all, because it's, and again, it depends on the judge, depends on the child, depends on the maturity of the child.
And in your experience, John, is it traumatic for the child? Because often the others are at odds with each other, shall we say, the grandparents maybe and the parent. Is that traumatic for the child? Because they have to take a side, I suppose.
Well, it is very traumatic for the child. Yeah. And I mean, I remember one of the most contentious cases that I was ever involved in, where ultimately one of the parents ended up in contempt of court and was jailed as a result of the whole scenario. Wow. And it was a very, very, very disturbing case, difficult case, and very difficult to assess, because you had, like, the scenario that you put up to me was very much like parental alienation that talk about, but in this instance there's a suggestion they feel that they've been deliberately alienated and it's not the wishes of the child and it's not in the best interest of the child that alienation should occur. And the ultimate question is, what can one do about it? Well, if you're looking at a legal scenario, there's two options open to the court in terms of dealing with this type of situation, and different judges over the years have tried different ways of doing it, and then they legislated on it and they said that there is an enforcement option open to the court. And when they handed the enforcement option to the court, the enforcement option they gave was that they could vary the access, they could introduce kind of supervised access, but they could also penalise the non-conforming party in it by charging them a fee or a cost for obstructing access. So that was a kind of, somebody came up with that idea of a kind of a way of monetising the whole scenario. But the ultimate redress of the court is for the court to take the view, and we're all very familiar with this when you read the newspaper when we're dealing with the Burke case, is contempt. And that's the ultimate sanction of any court, is that for the court, if you like, to take it personally and say, you are treating me with contempt, I have made orders here and you have contemptuously ignored them and not complied with them, and I'm there going to jail you. And I've had only one instance of that over the last 40 some odd, and coming up now nearly 40, 5 years now. But I've had one instance of that, and it was so to say it was interesting is wrong, but it was an interesting exercise to observe how that worked, and did it work? Because I remember during one it was a seminar conference, and I remember putting it to a Supreme Court judge. She was a High Court judge at the time, an eminent High Court judge who dealt with family law. And I asked her, I said, what does one do, or what would you suggest that I do if I'm in a situation where I'm acting for a client where I think the other client is obstructing the whole process and is deliberately trying to block access to children? And the question I asked her is, would you jail that client? Would you jail the person in contempt? And the answer I got was probably not. And it was an interesting thing, because ultimately at the end of the day, I suppose the judge is faced with the situation that if you're in that difficult a situation, does incarceration help? Does it do anything for it?
And where the child is concerned, the effect on the child.
And is it in the best interest of the child?
And John, in this case, it looks like the grandmother went to court, granted access and visitation and the like, but the daughter-in-law and her new partner, they've seemed to obstruct any attempt to at visitation. Or
well, you see, and this is the difficulty. I mean, it's extremely difficult to make any kind of an assessment on a situation like that, where, ironically enough, and I suppose is very legalistic, that you don't have all the facts. And what I'm saying by that is I'm not in any way judging the case as presented or the side as presented. And, the invariable argument that was always put up to me by judges when I was presenting a case where I was trying to establish that there was some alienation of some sort, whether it was extreme or otherwise, was the court judge would always look at you, and whether he said it, you kind of knew what he was thinking. He was saying, well, there's two sides to this, and I have to hear both sides. So, and that, ironically, is the whole essence of a case where one side is making one argument and somebody's making the other argument, that there will be two sides presented, and ultimately the decision as to whether or not there is or is not alienation, the onus, and that's the legal term, but the weight of the evidence has to come from the person making the argument that there is alienation. So in other words, in this particular instance, the onus is on the grandparent to prove this, and that therein lies the difficulty.
Yeah, because she says every visitation has been cancelled to everyone that was organised following the court case, and she hasn't seen the child for over a year. So she's at a junction now here as well, where she either drops the action, I guess.
Well, correct. And the point that you'd make there is that what's really, you know, because I thought about this. I've been in this scenario several times over the years, and you look at it and you think, well, what do you do and how do you advise the client? And it's a kind of a mixture of legal and kind of personal advice, in the sense that it's non-legal, and I don't mean personal to me, but it's not legal advice. It's more practical kind of advice is what you end up trying to look at, because you try, you do the best you can to attempt all the non-legal mechanisms. So you try negotiation, you try mediation, you try counselling, try to go through intermediaries, try to go through all the family members. You try and do it softly approach as best you can. At the same time as doing that, you document everything. So in other words, you kind of say to yourself, well, okay, ultimately I'm going to have to approve this, and the only way I can prove it is to document it. So you would have to document each instance and every scenario, so that when you sit into a witness box, you're able to say, well, I've made a contemporaneous note of what happened at this visit on this day at this time, and here's my note. This is what, and you can refer to notes in the witness box, and you can prove first of all that you made it at the same time, and you then run down through it and you say, well, on this day this is what happened. Ultimately and invariably, if you do document it with that in mind, and it's not easy to do that, by the way, but if you do document it, then you're in a position to give that evidence when it comes to the point where you have to
And that obviously
discharge.
will make your case much stronger.
Well, exactly. You've got to discharge your onus. The next thing then you've got to probably look at in this particular scenario is to go in on the enforcement mechanism. In other words, your next step up is you go in, if you're at the end, last resort position, you go into court, you explain your case to the judge, you say this is the position, and then overall then, if there's a constant refusal on that, you have to look to inviting the court to treat the other person in contempt. But when all is said and done, and you're able to stand back, if that's possible, and look at it objectively, you say to yourself, if I do all this, is it going to be in the child's best interest? And the parallel advice that I often reluctantly give to a client is, look, maybe you're better off looking to see, can you continue to show, you know, send the cards at birthday time, send the cards at Christmas time, send the presents, and do every possible way of trying to get the message across.
If you and I had this conversation last year, I'd go down and I'd be in total agreement with you on that. But we had a little grandchild this year, and I can't imagine what it would be like to have visitation obstructed in some way, or not get to see them because of the feelings you have for them. So it's tough. It's not easy.
But that's the problem, Fran. How you're asking somebody who's hugely traumatised, who's hugely emotionally invested in wanting to see their grandchild, and asking at the same time. It's the same question, by the way, that you have to put to a parent that's been obstructed. Yes. It's the same question you have to put.
Is it in the best interest of the child?
Of the mother or the child, or the father who might get obstructed? You're looking at the same thing. Am I doing anything to detriment the child? Is there anything to the child's detriment? Am I actually acting in their interests, or am I acting in my own interests because I want to see the child? Is it better in this situation? It's a bit like over the years I've been asked, people will come into me and they'll talk to me of the neighbour who's playing loud music, who's throwing rubbish over the wall, who's terrorising them every time they come out the front door, and they say, well, what can I do legally? I said, well, here's all the legal remedies. But your ultimate remedy, depending on what you're dealing with here, might be to move out. And you might say, and they might look at you and go, Jeannie Mac, are you seriously saying that? Well, I'm not. I'm saying to you that ultimately, sometimes you can't go through an obstacle. You have to go around it. And the difficulty with this is it's extremely hard to ask somebody to say to them that over the life of a grandchild, you might be obstructed for a period of 10 years, but the child, after 10 years, then that if you continue to make efforts, that there may be the possibility that there will be a re-engagement with your grandchild
at some
not
future
hard, not
time.
easy,
not easy.
No,
at
not
all.
easy. And I'm not offering a definitive answer on it because
you're not.
isn't
But
one.
you're still. What you're doing is very interesting. You're putting it to the grandmother to ask herself that question: what is in the best interest of the child, even if it means heartbreak for herself?
Can I hang in there and hope against hope? It's a bit like the district judge that asked me however many years ago, 25 maybe years ago, when I was running a case on behalf of a father who wasn't married to the mother, and the mother was away, not directly involved with the child. The child was being raised by someone else, and the father came in and said, well, I'm the father, can I not raise the child? I'll take time off work, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll be available to parent the child. And they refused, went into court, and the judge said to me about halfway through my argument, he looked down at me, he said, Mr. Lynch, you do appreciate that you're pushing, what is it, a rolling
boulder up a hill.
A boulder up a hill. Yeah. And I looked at him, I said, well, I don't know what I said, but I think I possibly just looked at him and said, well, if that's the case, I better be careful. It might come back down on top of me. But I mean, the reality of it was that wouldn't be the case now.
All right, John, pleasure as always. Thank you so much indeed for coming into us. John Lynch of Lynch Solicitors in Clonmel. I'll be right back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1-800-938 007.
Now, historian John Connors has travelled to Ukraine 6 times, with his most recent visits being to Bucha and to Irpin, the first cities to be occupied by Russian forces. John has collected accounts from eyewitnesses and survivors, and he's giving a talk tomorrow morning at the community centre in Borrisley about his experiences. But I'm glad to say he joins me now live in studio. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Fanny.
And it's great to see you. 6 times to Ukraine. Over what period of time, John?
Over 3 years.
Yeah.
My first time I went on a social visit. When the war began, a family from Colomia in West Ukraine stayed with me for 3 or 4 months, if I remember rightly. And, I became good friends with that family. And when an opportunity came, I went to visit those people. So that was my first visit to West Ukraine. And that was pretty peaceful. And then, of course, as I befriended Ukrainians across in Ireland, I wrote my books about Mariupol.
Sure, yeah.
And then, things progressed from that. I met people from other places, and they said, you wrote about Mariupol, but some terrible things happened in my city. I have an account to tell, I have a story to tell. Why do you not, So these things, Fran, I suppose, most of the things that happen in my life happen without any great plan. So just things, I meet people in certain places, and that's the reason for my going there, and things just evolve.
Yeah, and you've written quite a lot on Irish history, but how much across Ukrainian history were you before this?
Zero, Frank.
Zero, right.
Before the full-scale invasion, I knew Kyiv was the capital of Ukraine.
Yeah.
I actually thought Odessa was in Russia, which my Ukrainian friends today remind me I should be very much ashamed of.
Yes.
But I know absolutely nothing about that country, had zero interest in it, and even though much of my travels in my younger years have been to Eastern Europe, especially the former Yugoslavia, Poland, East Germany, because I have an interest in that. But I just had no inclination to go to Ukraine, and I just felt it was another satellite of Russia, and you know. But needless to say, Fran, I discovered much to the opposite in the meantime.
And what did you discover about the country?
Ukraine has a history and a culture completely separate from Russia. They're an older country than Russia. Kyiv is 1,000 years older than Moscow. And they're a country that have great pride in that history, great pride in their culture. It's a vast country, twice the size of Italy. And just from my travels there and interacting with Ukrainian people here in Ireland, I met the nicest of people, the most interesting people, and it had been a life changer for me, it has. So overall I say I discovered a nation of courage, a nation of resilience. The similarities with our own history, Fran, are striking. Especially we say the aggressive neighbour to the east, and the centuries long longing for independence and the expression of their own ideals and their own culture, and their political thinking gravitates towards Europe. Like they have their problems. Needless to say, all of these places have, and has been highlighted lately, with corruption issues and all of that. But their inclination is towards democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of speech.
There is an overlapping of cultures, though. I mean, particularly where Donbass is concerned, where you have a Russian culture in there, and indeed where Crimea is concerned as well. Is that part of the issue?
It's part of the issue, Fran, but then there's a similarity between that and our history. In those parts of Ukraine, the Donbass was rich in minerals. East of the Carpathians, the agricultural land, and by enforced famine and enforced emigration to Siberia, kidnapping of people, displacement of people, and people came from parts of Russia and they moved into houses that were occupied the day before by Ukrainian people. So what you're talking about there is centuries of plantation. Where Russian
like we seen in the north of Ireland.
This is what you're talking about. Yeah. And these things just don't evaporate, they don't. So people have that affinity to their homeland, to their home place. People have been imported into these places. And Fran, the trouble is, you see, or amongst many of the troubles, is this constant, relentless diet of Russian propaganda that these people are fed. And sadly, I suppose this is consumed by many people today, consumed and admired by many people in the free world, or what we would call the free world. If we continue to consume too much of this, it won't be the free world. But
this is through social media platforms and the like.
It is relentless, And if you're talking about somebody is subjected to propaganda, just think of this: his father, grandfather, and great grandfather were subjected to the same thing. It just becomes the norm.
Yes.
And so
you're talking travels in a time of war. You've written about war on many occasions.
Yes.
What is it like to be immersed in that, though? What is that feeling like to be in a country that's at war?
I just say, I describe Kyiv, for example, as a tale of two cities. I walk down Kyiv during the day, and I see people going shopping, people on the metro. Maybe there's even some street entertainers out. Then, as soon as dark falls, people go to the metros for shelter. The air raid sirens begin to wail incessantly. Then the drones and the rockets come. And, the noise is, it's absolutely terrifying, it is. And the next morning, the sirens stop and the people emerge from the metros, they emerge from their shelters and they face the day again. And this is just in Kyiv, the capital. So if we were to go further, say last night, for example, last night in Dnipro, a massive attack in the city again, a house levelled, and, we don't know at this stage how many people are killed. So, this is the reality right across Ukraine. And, people talk about safe places in Ukraine. When I was there, just 40 kilometres from where I was, the city of Ternopil was subjected to a drone and missile attack. And almost, I think there's 38 people at present are documented as being killed, and 6 more are missing. Not to mention the injured. And Fran, when we talk about injured, it's not somebody with a scratch in their arm. These are limbs torn from bodies, and this is absolutely frightening. And to me, to be in those situations after, and to talk to people who are central to that, it's to me, maybe not for everybody, but to me, it is absolutely devastating.
I know you for a long time, John. Is it fair to say that this has had more of an effect on you and your life than anything else in your life?
Certainly, Fran. I wrote about Irish history, and I wrote about things that happened 100 years ago, and wrote about the conflicts and try to attach understanding and sense to that. But this is something that's happening in a European country right now. This is something that happened the night before last in the European capital. It's not something that happened far away. And what makes it more personal is that I've got to know so many Ukrainian people, and people who have been affected by the war. And I've seen these things and been up close and personal to them. And I want to tell you one story, Fran, about how these things impinge on me. And I can only talk about how they affect me. Was in September, I was in Kiev, and there was a terrible missile attack in the city that night. And the lady I was staying with, she actually worked in Tipperary town for a while, and she had a lung and took it back to her homeland. And she was caught up in a missile attack, and she lost her hand. And I was staying in her house, I was. And
wow.
And the air raid sirens started, then the drones and the missiles came, and we went to a little bathroom, herself, her husband, and myself. And she was down in the corner, and she was terrified for her life, as I was. And when the noise stopped and the siren stopped, I put down my hand to reach out to pull her up from the corner, but she had no hand to catch. I'll tell you another story, Fran. In the city of Cllr, I passed by a rehabilitation hospital. I've been very familiar with these places. And I was walking along the footpath, minding my own business. And on the other side of the footpath, there was a man pushing his wheelchair, and he had no legs, a double amputee. And he was minding his business, I was minding mine. And we came to the top of the street, and I turned left over the pedestrian crossing. And at that moment, he turned right to come up with his wheelchair off the footpath. But there was no gradient on the footpath, and his wheelchair turned over, and he literally fell into my arms. And there was nobody there to help, nobody. And I did not understand the language, and he did not understand me. And he held on to me, and then, it seemed like an age help came. We got him into his wheelchair. And like I say, Fran, he held on to me. And that was last September, and he still holds on to me. Like, these are maybe...
And what do you mean by that? Is that's going to stay with you?
It stays with me, Fran. Like, and our lives just crossed for that brief moment. But here was a man, like, he has forgotten me, but I cannot forget him. And the circumstances that brought that, that brought him to that point. A cruel, needless, and worthless invasion again, we talk about the aggressive neighbour to the east, all for the sake of an opaque empire, that has no meaning, no beneficial meaning for anybody on this earth.
President Zelensky is in Ireland today. He'll be addressing the Houses of the Oireachtas this afternoon. What about the people? I mean, what we're hearing is that the people of Ukraine are not all that enamoured with him at this point, and that he has a lot of opposition. Is that your experience, John?
Well, it depends where you go.
Yeah.
Look, in today's world, is there any popular leader? It's a time of war. I don't think anybody would in Ukraine, or any Ukrainian in Ukraine would opt for capitulation or surrender. There is things happen in the internal politics of Ukraine. And corruption is an issue, Fran, it is. And they can...
Well, it's endemic. It's been a huge issue for Ukraine long before the war.
It's endemic in this country,
Yeah.
Fran. Like, I travelled quite a bit throughout Bosnia, and Bosnia since to date in peace, 1996, 30 years. And it's endemic today as it was back in former Yugoslavia. This is an inheritance for the Soviet system. They pretend to pay us, we pretend to work. So they pretend to pay them. So from the most minor official down to the highest echelons of government, people do this. And this is treachery of the highest order. You know, we're not talking about some policeman taking $5 to quash a parking ticket. We're talking about $100 million that could equip people for the front. And it's good that this is coming out, and it's good that we know about this. You know, but that poor man in the wheelchair, he has no input.
He's not connected to that.
He's not connected to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, for those of us who maybe feel that inclination that we like to help Ukraine in some way, we can always find 1,000 reasons not to. You know, and I could find them. But that man on the wheelchair gives me that one reason that I need. You know, so that's how I look at it, Fran.
Tell me about the culture. Is there a dance culture? Is there a music culture? Is there?
I was at a festival in Cllr, and I love my dancing, Fran. I do. Back in a previous life, I used to teach a little bit of dancing, and we went to this festival, and there'd be a dance, and very much like set dancing in Ireland.
Yeah.
And then they sing a song, and my host Roman, he wanted me to go away, but we're going to a barbecue, and I said, we'll stay for one more, and you know, and the colour, the colour and the pageantry, and their dances tell a story.
Right.
You know, and it's what do I say? You know, it's a culture, and they have a pride in that, and their Vyshavanka, their national dress, and they're proud people. So, you know, that's
I think you're going to reference in your talks as well a person who was captured by the Russians and who escaped.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little of that experience?
I can, of course, Fran. Dmitry Yavchenko. If I ever met a human being, as I say, a top-of-the-range human being, a great man, he has documented 531. Is documented 531 people were murdered by Russians when the Russians came to Bucha. He's documented them through DNA, through dental records, and all of that. And he's given them a name. He's also working at the moment. On the moment is, I think, it's 23 people who are missing and who have not been found, and he's given his life to this. So, you know, this is his life. And I met him in his office, and he showed me, you know, his records. He gave me access to these, and we sat down together, and he told me the stories about the deaths of these people. He was an amazing human being. You know, like to be just in his presence, I was awestruck. Now, I just my last time in Bucha, again a little bit of confusion. We had booked in one hotel, and a lady had booked for us then in another hotel, and we went to this other hotel, and I met a young man, Artem. I don't know his second name. He was only 22 or 23 years old, and he was a little bit in awe to see Irish people go to his city. Yeah. Like, this was a kind of a source, I suppose, a source of curiosity for these people. And he came to us that evening, and he said, I am from Bucha. You know, he said, I'm very proud of my city. We have a lovely park here. He said, would you mind? He said, I'd like to show you that park. So myself and my friend Jim, we went with him. And then he told us about his story, about his father, a lieutenant colonel in the army, captured on the second day of the war and still in Russian captivity. And from the stories he can get from that place, that his father is a prisoner, he's subjected to very cruel treatment in that place. He's waiting for the day for his father to come home so he can join the army, because now he's the breadwinner for his family. You know, and he took us to the church of St. Andrew, where 119 people were buried in a mass grave. You know, and he showed us to Vokzalna Street, you know, that scene where the Russian tanks were destroyed. And we went to Irpin, to the university in Irpin, and I met a lady there, an administrator there, and she was a high rank, held a high rank in the army at the time of the Russian invasion of that city. And she led her troops, she led her troops to defend that university. And, there's interaction, to meet those people. And she showed me pictures of 59 students and staff of that university who were killed in that occupation, in the first days of that occupation. So these are the stories, friend, I have collected. These are the people
and
that I have
what you're
met.
going to talk about tomorrow as
and
well.
This is what, Fran, why do I bother with this? Or why do it's important that we know. If people want to know, I will tell them. If they don't want to know, that's their concern. But it's important that people know what that country is going through right now. And I've said this, Fran, like, as I did not meet them, but I saw the testimony of when the Russians came to Bucha, the youngest person they raped was a 4-year-old girl. The oldest was 75, and those are testimonies that are there now, written and collected by Dmitry Kravchenko, and they are there for prosperity, and they're. And I do this, Fran, and I will tell people about this, that we will not take the liberties that we have for granted, and there is an inclination to do that in the free world, and we should be very, very careful.
All right, well said, John. So that's tomorrow at the Community Centre in Bursley at 11 o'clock, and it'll be fascinating. I know it will. John, it's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you so much for coming into us today. Just before I go, the finalist in our Two Johnnies competition is Niamh Delaney from Roscrea. Well done to you, Niamh. You got into the big draw on Friday for those tickets to Pints in the Field. That's it from me. Leanne produced, Ali looks after content, and Stephen has the time tunnel. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.